Hello, and welcome to the Choralosophy Podcast. I'm Chris Muntz. This is episode 46, Teaching with Heart, with Dr. Jason Max Ferdinand. When we see and hear the Aeolians perform, we are impressed by the technical precision. We are in awe of the dynamic range, the tone, the diction, the phrasing. Those things impress us, for sure. But we are inspired by the emotional buy-in and engagement from the singers in the ensemble. This culture doesn't just happen in a choral ensemble, it's taught. It is an art and in and of itself to convince singers to pour their whole selves into each piece of music. In Dr. Ferdinand's second appearance on the show, by the way, episode 11 was his first appearance on the show, all the way back in June, we discussed the philosophy behind his Teaching with Heart book that has just come out, and it seeks to inject tools into the conductor's arsenal to address the most important issues in our world. In doing so, we do a deep dive into the rehearsal techniques that foster connection to each other through the making of choral music. Now, before we get to Dr. Ferdinand, I have some announcements and some shout outs. The first thing, I would like to shout out the supporters over on Patreon, patreon.com/choralosophy. Are chipping in each month voluntarily because they just like the show and we want to make sure that this show can continue. For as little as $3 a month, you can get in there and get a subscriber only episode each month in a private podcast feed, which I didn't even know how to do until recently. I was putting stuff on there, but I recently figured out how to put a private podcast feed into my own Apple Music or Apple Podcast Player or Castbox or whatever. So it's a pretty neat thing. Whenever I publish, if you're a Patreon subscriber, if I publish a private episode, it just pops onto your phone like all the other ones. You probably knew that, but I didn't know that. I just figured that out. So that's pretty cool. The show is supported at the producer level on Patreon by Ulrika Igrain, Munoz Alarcon, David Kowalczyk, James Mock, Steve and Kathy Kakachik, Kyle Peterson, Michael Herron, and Ryan Main. Thank you for all of your support over there at Patreon. Also, of course, have to make sure that everybody hears about and continues to hear between now and next spring. We are putting together a small, socially distant, so we can be safe, but so we can be together, convention in Atlanta, April 9 through 11, ChoralosophyCon 2021. Maybe it's a one-time thing that we do. Maybe it's the start of a new tradition. We'll see how that goes. But what you can do is search Facebook for ChoralosophyCon 2021. There's a small Facebook group of people who are interested in going. We're going to be posting a lot of the plans there. You can also go to my website and in the show notes for this show, choralosophy.com/choralosophy-con, C-O-N, to get the information about that. And of course, like everything else, you can join Choralosophers on Facebook, which is the big group for this show, where we can discuss all of the things going on with the show. So that's coming up. Also, it's time to be singing again. For some of you, almost all of you, in some form or another. You've got your ensembles in a virtual setting. You've got your ensembles in a hybrid or in person. But the good news is that we are buying sheet music again, which is really important. And this show has a couple of sheet music vendors that affiliate and have supported us since the very beginning. And that's graphitepublishing.com and ryanmain.com. Both of these websites are excellent choices, especially now when a digital copy of your music is so helpful because your singers are geographically spread out all over the place. So head on over to graphitepublishing.com or ryanmain.com to find some excellent high-quality choral sheet music for all levels of choirs. And the great thing there is you can enter Choralosophy at checkout to get 10% off. You can also use that Choralosophy checkout code, of course, at sightreadingfactory.com to get you and your students a membership for the school year. It's not too late. Start now. Get them in the habit of sight reading. And of course, at mymusicfolders.com, you can be getting that Resonance Singer's Mask, as well as a whole bunch of other stuff that you need for your choirs. They have a lot of choir gear and equipment there to peruse through. And just like the others, you can enter Choralosophy at checkout at all of the sponsors' websites to get a coupon discount code, and you can use it every time you purchase at those companies. Finally, last but not least, we have Voce Vista, which is a sound wave and overtone analyzing software that is a fantastic digital teaching tool for in-person or uh, distance learning. It basically, you can import a recording or a record live directly into a microphone, and it shows you the full spectrum of fundamental all the way up to the overtone. And then even if the singer is singing with a formant or not, they can see it. And the practical application is, once they're taught to see it, you don't even have to be the bad guy anymore. They can see that they're not singing the right vowel based on the overtone series. They can see that they've lost resonance because their formant disappeared. And you can train them to sing while they're watching their own sound wave. And it's amazing what they can do to adjust as they see it go. The way this works for listeners of the show is you would go to vocevista.com/choralosophy, and then you can use that link to download a copy of the software for free. You get to play with it for 30 days. And when you decide you love it and want to purchase it, you can enter Choralosophy at checkout and get a 10% discount at that site as well. Okay, so that takes care of all the shout outs and the thank yous and the announcement. I really do hope to see you in Atlanta. But the moment you've all been waiting for, Jason Max Ferdinand, is coming up soon on the show. I hope you enjoy it and stick around all the way to the end because it gets good. Okay, I'm here on the show with Jason Max Ferdinand. Welcome back, Jason, to the show. It's been a little bit over a year, but you're back.
Well, thank you so much for having me. Man, it's been a year already?
June of 2019. You're
Wow.
on the show.
Wow. Well, thanks for having me back.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting. I was just looking back at that episode, actually, just getting ready for you to come back on.
Yeah.
And the show was pretty darn brand new back then. And it's interesting because back at that time, probably only a few hundred people heard it. Since then, thousands of people have gone back and listened to that episode. And
Wow.
so the show is has grown quite a bit since then. And it seems like your activities are just blowing up all over the place. How famous are you planning on getting? That's what I want to know.
I'm not trying to be famous at all. I have no desire. My natural proclivity, and I'm an introvert. People have a hard time understanding that, but I don't need to leave my house if I. So I'm not trying to be famous, man. I'm just exploring my passions and try to do the best that I can possibly be.
Right. Yeah. Of course, I'm just giving you a hard time, but it's awesome to see all the stuff that you're doing. Tell me a little bit about this CD that you guys made.
Oh man. So back in March, we recorded this album down in Atlanta, and we assembled some amazing orchestral players in that area, and our publisher, GIA Publishers, partnered with us in putting together that album. And it's kind of interesting how life goes. 3 days after we recorded, school shut down and everybody had to go home.
Oh, wow.
So we just marvel at the fact that we were even able to get it done, because if we had scheduled it like a week later, it would never happen, right?
Right.
So it was basically an album of music we were doing during that school year. We had particular themes in it. And in retrospect now, some of the themes are so directly related to what has happened all this spring, all this summer. And it's just amazing how that kind of all unfolded without direct planning.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. I saw that it had come out, and that was one of my first thoughts is like, how did they record? Like, how did they get this done during this time? And of course, yeah, you guys snuck it right under the bell.
Yeah.
That is pretty amazing. That is pretty amazing. I've gotten to listen to a little bit. I haven't gotten to listen to the whole thing yet, but it's pretty amazing work. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. We thoroughly enjoyed doing it, and we had a wonderful collaborative time with the instrumentalists. They were not just great musicians, but just fun and great people.
Yeah. So then tell me a little bit about your start to this school year then. Of course, everything's crazy now. What kind of stuff are you doing? What does your beginning of the school year look like for you?
Yeah, well, man, the choral community has really come together, and we all share the same challenges, right? Oakwood University decided to kind of go in person, but with a lot of flexibility to those who wanted to stay at home and be totally online. And even those who came to Huntsville that want to stay in their dorms or stay in their apartments. So we have a lot of hybrid scenarios going on with classes. For me, I started my choir rehearsals like 3 weeks into the semester because I was trying to see what would happen on campus and that sort of thing. And we invested in those masks that you turned me on to, the
Yeah, yeah.
resonance masks. We bought 80 of those. And then we also bought the Wegner, these huge music shields. So every one of my singers has one of those in front of them at all times. So the mask and the shields. And we moved our rehearsals out of our regular choir room into basically like a huge gym, and we in this huge circle about I don't know 12 feet apart or something. But
Uh-huh.
it's been challenging. I mean, you don't hear as you used to, and getting used to a new space, and just having to really let go of some of the musical things we harp on as choir directors a lot, and you forget that sometimes you forget just the little things. Like for example, first rehearsal I'm trying to fix a vowel, and then it dawns on me, well, dag, I can't see your mouth or your tongue and your teeth. Like how so part of me just has to kind of just let it go, and for me, I'm realizing just I think the most important thing now is just trying to keep the community of the choir alive and together, and trying to inspire the kids probably more than trying to be totally musical. So
Yeah,
once I took that pressure off it, everything got better.
right. Yeah, that's kind of been my experience too. I've been telling my students this school year that the old me would have been very, very frustrated by the lack of musical precision that was going on in the choirs at our school right now.
Yeah.
But right now, I was changed so much during the pandemic experience that I'm now just grateful that we get to be there. And I'm grateful that we get to be there singing when there are a lot of places that still aren't able to do that. And so we've been leaning really hard on the here's what we get to do
Exactly.
side of it. And it's been kind of liberating and kind of freeing in the sense that, by this point, you kind of alluded to this too, with the flexibility at your school. At this point of the year, I would already have my whole school year planned out. I'd
Yeah.
have like all the sheet music that we need ordered. We'd know exactly what we're going to do on March 2nd,
Right.
that kind of thing. And now we just don't know. And so I'm taking it one day at a time, yeah,
That,
which is kind of a nice feeling.
that's all we can do. And so the last few rehearsals have probably been the most enjoyable, for the very fact I just shared, and and the students are starting to kind of make sense of the music we've been working on. We've been working on Christmas music from day one, and our hope is to record it, video audio recording in about 2 weeks. So I'm just hoping that things hold up in terms of the virus and that sort of thing, so we could actually do it. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah. So are you gonna do the thing where you record it inside with the masks on, and then you do like a video afterwards with outside, like with their masks off? Have you thought about that? How are you gonna do that?
Uh, you know, right now the plan is to record it with the mask.
Hmm.
I mean, no sense trying to be pretty and trying to make it look good. We're in a pandemic, so those masks that you turned me on to, you hear pretty well.
You do?
So, yeah, it doesn't. We don't lose a whole lot. So I think for safety precautions, we will record it with the mask.
Right. Yeah, that's good. What I've found interesting is that yes, with those masks, with the resonance masks, you don't lose a lot of what it would sound like. But it's an interesting challenge for the singers because we've started to realize how much we rely on seeing each other's mouths too. It's not just the conductor seeing the singers' mouths, it's the singers seeing each other's mouths.
Yeah, yeah,
And they started to comment on I normally, I guess I didn't realize I was kind of looking at people to make sure I was exactly moving
right.
together, and now I can't do that. I'm just been telling them we've only got our ears then. Like we have to do it by ear, and we have to do it by counting. Like,
Yeah.
okay, singers are going to have to actually count this year, like, stuff like that. So
That's pretty funny.
there's a silver lining. There's a silver lining.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Y so what about this, you've also been working. I was joking with you before about, just how famous you were getting, and I was, of course, totally goofing around with you, but what's interesting about that is you mentioned that you're introvert by nature,
Yeah.
but yet you've gotta go out and you've gotta network and you've gotta, put together these projects. Now, is there part of it is do you and feel free to say, "No, this is just not me at all." But is part of that because by jumping out of your comfort zone and doing all these projects, it's allowing you access to doing bigger and better musical things later on in your life?
Oh wow, I don't even think about it like that at all, Chris. Like I said, the recording, I would have done the recording if it was just for the pleasure of myself and my students. So the fact
Mhm.
that they would just have it as something that we did, if it got released or not a big deal for me. But and all the other things that happen, again, I think are just the byproduct of exploring your passion, right? And
Right.
I tell that to all my students, whether they're into music or into medicine or something. You focus on your passion, do well in it, and doors and opportunities will kind of open up for you, as opposed to starting out by saying, well, I just want to be the best surgeon, I want to be famous for surgery. No, be passionate about it and pour yourself into it and learn everything you possibly can about it, and the doors will open. So I think that's been the case for me. But I certainly don't think about trying to be famous. It's a lot of work being famous. You know what I mean? There's another level of something there that I don't think I even want. You know what I mean? There's a
Yeah.
lot that comes with that. So no, I'm just exploring my passion, man. Honestly.
Right. No, I identify with that completely because I feel like one of the experiences that I've had in my life and career is that in the choral world, sometimes we are the default, I guess the old guard, you might say, of the choral profession is that you wait for someone to invite you to be the clinician at X, Y, and Z thing, and then someone else will introduce you and prop you up as the conductor of this guest. They're the guest conductor, and that's always been like the pinnacle of what it means to be successful in our profession. And and what's interesting is that in 2020 and in really in the last 4 or 5 years, with more of our art form becoming um, dependent, just like any other art form, any other like pop music or any other form of music, where there's a certain aspect of we need to be visible enough to get opportunities to be able to do the projects that we want to do. But the way I think about it is, you kind of play a little bit of that game in order to be able to make the music that you want to make. Like for me, that's what motivates me when I do stuff that might seem like it's self-promoting or whatever. It's like I want to make better music, and I want to make better music next year than I can make now.
Right.
And so that when for me, following my passion means like I want to set myself up for opportunities to do more and more stuff.
I see what you're saying. Like the people who are around me and kind of help me with planning and stuff, they'll tell you they are always on me about, Jason. This there has to be a part of you that sells yourself, and that is so against my nature.
Yep.
So I mean, lately I've been trying to improve on posting stuff on social media, and I absolutely loathe it. Like it's like I'm forcing myself to
Right.
be on social media and to kind of be present, and
Feels kind of dirty.
it feels kind of dirty, and it's just not my natural thing. But my people tell me you need it for the marketing, you need it for this and that. So I'm trying to become a little more comfortable with it, but it's not my nature at all.
Right. Well, and of course, now the thing that you're out there, dirty posting now is about this book that you wrote.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that a little bit. That's kind of the core of what I was hoping to really talk to you, the philosophy behind what you did with that project.
Wow. Well, man, teaching with heart is was literally born out of some discussions with some music educators from around the nation, and all of them are high school teachers by and large, right? And I think for me, May 25th, 2020 will be forever a murky day in American history. That's the day when George Floyd was killed, and I think every creed and race could identify with the stinging wound of social injustice, right? And we saw people all around the world marching and protesting. And I just think, as choral directors, part of our responsibility is to address what's the word I'm looking for? The maladies that society presents, and I don't think no longer we should turn a blind eye to such matters. So no longer should we just be seeking to be, be these musical giants. We have to find ways now to reach people's hearts in a real sincere way. So this choral conductors compendium is a result of a very rewarding, and I use that word very sincerely here, a very rewarding gestational process. And I'm so glad that it's finally birthed. And I'm just so proud to present something that kind of challenges the traditional methods of pedagogy and traditional literature, and really helps us to reflect on what's going on in society, and essentially using music as a tool to present different topics in our classrooms that typically we'll just not address at all, right? So it addresses a lot of socio learning, social emotional learning standards. It addresses all the national arts standards, and it just really pushes us to have these heart to heart conversations within our classrooms, and cross director to directors. I'm just really really proud and happy for the team that kind of helped me put this together. So excitingly too, some part of me wanted to self-publish it from beginning to end, honestly, just so I could learn that process. And oh my gosh, it's a lot.
I
It's a
bet.
lot. Um, but I think we released it on a Monday, and on Tuesday, my dear friend and my publisher from GIA reached out and said, Jason, congratulations! I saw you put this new book out. Do you want us to publish it? And I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't think this would happen this fast. So actually, Chris, in the next week or two, GIA is going to take over full publishing, and actually do hard copy version. So I'm really, really excited about that.
Very cool. Okay, so here's what I want to do. I want to dig in a little bit to what you did, and first, just so that everyone listening, if they haven't ever bought a conductor's compendium for their classroom before, could you just give us kind of the technical, the way the book's laid out, how a teacher on a day-to-day basis would actually use it? How is it? What's intended there?
So, so the first thing that everyone needs to know is the topics stemmed from the latest Aeolian recording, right? So what we did was divided the book up into these 12 modules, and teachers don't have to go in sequential order. You could skip around. So for example, I'll pick one of the modules. It's called it's based on a song called the Promised Land. And the Promised Land, the guy who did that chapter, Ryan Marsh, who is up there in Kentucky, his topic is called social justice, just us or all of us. And I want to highlight Ryan because at the beginning of the process, Ryan was very, very upfront, and he said to me, Jason, I am very uncomfortable with bringing up a topic like this to my students who are all Caucasian kids from Kentucky. How do I even address this? But I admire Ryan because he said because of that, he wanted to tackle that topic. So what we did was pair him up with the composer of that piece, Ken Burton, who lives over in England. And along with the compendium comes 4 hours of video interviews, right? That's another cool part of this whole project. The conversation that Ryan and Ken had was so moving. Like we were all virtually to tears to see Ryan go through the minefields of trying to understand historical aspects, and then how Ken implemented those historical things into the piece. So now this teacher in the classroom can literally, one, you have access to the recording. The book is outlined where you have this section called Delve Deeper, where you could listen to things that are related and go into discussions. In Ryan's chapter, he focuses a lot on the text. So you look at the poetry. There are question banks at the end of the chapters where the teachers can just pull and ask questions. So it's very, very techy in a sense. And I think students in this modern age will have a really good go at going around to the different activities in every chapter.
Okay. So think I'm going to make you be a salesman here for a second. So if a director like me who directs a uh my entire program is a performance-based program. They are there for choir practice. Like
Mhm.
they're there to sing.
Yeah.
How would I work this in? Is this something I need to stop my rehearsal process for several days and do a music history class, or is this, or are there, can you think of ways to kind of just weave it into a rehearsal process?
You know, like, Chris, that's an excellent question. I'll use myself as an example. In the Aeolians, I do these things. I don't have a name for it, but let's just call it for right now a focus point. I have a way of, sometimes I'll say to my student worker, you go ahead, do the warm ups, do the focus thing. Or some days I'll say, you know what, I'll start. And in my mind, I know I'm going to stop in the middle of that rehearsal to go into a discussion type thing or a question thing. And we kind of go back and forth, or I'll leave it for the end. It just kind of all depends on what you're doing, when you want to insert it. Do you want them to be more concrete with the music first before you start the discussion, or do you want to start with the discussion to kind of set up everything after? So I think the teachers have all the license in the world to drop it in where you choose. But I would say this for me, and this is work for the Aeolians. There's no way now I could just do a piece, learn it musically, rhythms, notes, and then just go and perform it. Like there'll be a huge part of the Aeolian experience missing. We have to talk about the historical aspects of a piece. We have to talk about where this piece was birthed. We have to talk about how is this piece going to be used to reach the audience. How is this piece going to reach us? And what do we want to feel when we sing not just this piece, but how do we want to feel when we sing this phrase and this next phrase? So I would be lost if I were just to teach music and not delve into all these other things that, to me, take the music really off the page. So, but how and when you do it, I think the teacher will be the best ones to kind of answer that and how they want the rhythm of their class to go. But that's how I do it personally. So the book is outlined in a way that really reflects what I do myself.
Okay, yeah, so that makes sense, and I'm trying to visualizing it in my context too, and because I know a lot of people listen to the show have a similar class structure than what I have. So
Right.
typically for me, because I agree with you, we like to talk, sit down a lot, and talk about the underpinnings of every piece that we do.
Right.
And usually though, for me, those conversations happen very organically when I'm on the podium and I'm noticing that maybe they're disconnected from it in some way, or maybe they are, maybe they're bored, and maybe we just need a change of pace and we need to sit down rather than singing it. We need to dive into it a little bit more. And I rely on my own kind of research prior and knowledge about that piece to start a conversation. So I can see something like this for me being something that I would start reading prior to the piece. I
Mhm.
would start to internalize some of the information first, and then when it becomes organic in rehearsal, start some of these conversations, and then I've got this resource right there
Right.
that I can point to, and I can also think of ways um, for in this current environment where there's a lot of teachers out there doing virtual still, and there's virtual instruction and hybrid instruction, where
Right.
you do need something to pump out to kids at home
Right.
to keep them engaged. This kind of has a multifaceted use, I think.
Exactly. Exactly. And when we did it, because we were doing it during the pandemic, that was a huge factor in the way we wanted to present it too, and outline the book, because we realized a lot of kids will be at home and teachers are like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? Because I can't have my traditional rehearsal. And I think you could go through these modules and still have an in-depth semester. You know, probably not so much of the music making, but there's so many other things that go into that music making. And I think if we find a way to marry this concept now with our music making, oh man, I can't wait for after the pandemic, because
Mhm.
that marriage right there could make things so much more creative, so much more passionate, so much more informed once we get out back to kind of some normalcy.
Right. Now, are all the modules in the book social justice related, or are they different topics?
Different topics. So you have social justice issues. You have issues dealing with. Susan Labar has a wonderful song called "We Remember Them."
Oh, I
So,
love that piece.
right, dealing with loss and how we address that. And like I said, it has a huge social, emotional learning component as well. So part of that is just kind of creating what's the word I'm looking for? Transparency, yet safety in your classrooms. and the word I keep hearing a lot now, empathy, and I think that's a secret sauce thing that probably not enough choirs rely on. I know here at Oakwood University, not just my choir, Oakwood University is a place where people tend to be a little more open than usual, sometimes to a fault, but that also sparks a lot of empathy and sympathy between students. And I know every situation in, like, public versus a private religious school, you can't always approach things the same way. But I think that empathy thing is a secret sauce that people probably should dive into a little more, but in context of a safe place, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wondered, I wanted to pick your brain a little bit about this. You mentioned, it was interesting. You brought up the social justice module as an example, and I've actually got a little snippet of it here in front of me,
Nice.
where Ryan's talking about, and that's Ryan Marsh. That you said he wrote the module. What was his
Yeah.
role?
So each of these contributors, as we call them, basically came up with the lesson plan and kind of flushed out their thoughts on that. And then myself and the editor, we came behind and just kind of out, put the layout as we wanted it. And then I kind of moderated all the interviews with all the composers and asked the questions during those interviews. So yeah. So Ryan
Right.
Marsh was the brainchild behind this chapter.
Okay, got it. Yeah. So I'm looking at that, and I think one of my teacher uh, inner debates that I've been going on in myself for years is this idea that we keep, like, kind of like you mentioned, that it's our responsibility to be guiding some of these social justice related conversations within the choral rehearsal. And I don't necessarily disagree with that. I just wonder sometimes how, on a day-to-day basis, in a practical sense, a teacher working with kids who have never sang before,
Yeah.
we've got to teach them quarter notes too. And
Right.
or else you folks at the college level will get very frustrated in the next 4 years.
Right.
Um, and so what I wonder, what my internal struggle always is like, I want my classroom to be a place where kids can talk about those issues too, and that especially when they're in the context of a piece of music that we're working on, because I do believe that makes it more real for kids. If I were to just sit them down and say, okay, today, guys, we're going to pull out Jason Ferdinand's book about social and do the social justice chapter,
Mhm.
and then just move on, it would feel very uh, contrived.
Yeah, yeah,
Whereas if we were working on music, or even that particular piece of music, or a very similar piece of music, and we're tying these ideas into that and helping them see how this music really does tell this story, then I'm completely on board. I just wonder your thoughts on how does a teacher balance that in terms of time in the rehearsal, when we say it's our job to foster these conversations. How does that weigh against our job to teach them music
yeah.
fundamentals and all of that? How do you see that playing out?
That's a great question too. And again, for me, I would say, so for example, if we use this module as the example, maybe I would not address the entire module or all the aspects of the module in one rehearsal.
Yeah.
I'll find a way to spread it over, X amount of rehearsals, but taking little bits at a time, because it could get kind of, it's a deep topic, especially this chapter that you referenced. So I would find a way to just kind of just touch it, 5 minutes today. Tomorrow I may need 10. Or when we learn the entire piece, maybe I want to devote 15 minutes at that point, because now they really know the music, and they need to know the context a little more. So I don't think you have to approach it like a full module at a time. I would kind of just splice it up and do a little bit here, a little bit there. So that would be my approach and my advice to the teachers.
Yeah. Now, what about then outside of the context of your book, and just more generally, how do you see our well, because one of the things, I guess I'll just frame it this way. Um, we see in our online conversations
Mhm.
in the choir world right now. Uh, I don't know if you'd agree with this, but what I see is I see us very heavily focused on social justice, diversity type topics.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
seems to be almost every day that I get on a Facebook group, that's what people are talking about.
right.
Which again, I'm not opposed to talking about that, but I also want to talk about quarter notes.
Yeah,
I,
yeah.
I, I also want to talk about the music. So I guess how do you see our job more broadly balancing those two roles as guiding kids in the way that they discuss empathy and bringing unity into a rehearsal, but also being their musical mentor?
Yeah, and we could never lose the idea of having to teach the basic rudiments. And again, uh, the book. So that, for example, there's a great chapter 2 in the book by Cindy Ellis, who has her degrees in vocal jazz, right? But she has an amazing choral program down in Miami. So she was excited to bring those two worlds together. And her module is more of a kind of compositional theory kind of chapter. So the answer to your question, you would find some of those rudiments in her chapter as opposed to Ryan's chapter dealing with social justice. So we didn't want to make it a diversity book per se or social justice book per se.
Mhm.
I was just using Ryan's chapter as an example. But she kind of blended those two worlds and she called it, I think she called it jazz in choral music. And she looked at that song that we did on the album, Smile, that Cedric Den from Take Six arranged. And she blends those two things beautifully. And she goes into a little bit about scat syllables and just makes it, very exciting for kids who probably will never or don't get to sing that style too much. And you could kind of bring those two worlds together. So yeah, we could never lose sight of teaching the basic rudiments of music, especially on the high school level to kids. So the balance is a tricky thing, right, Chris? That good balance of how much is too much or how much do I do today as opposed to this. And I think every teacher with good lesson planning skills and a good vibe of your room and taking the temperature of the kids and how fast they're learning things. I think you could mesh the two successfully.
Yeah, I do too. I just was interested in your thoughts on that because I have this kooky theory that the better our choirs are in
Hmm.
terms of the rudiments of the music making, the more open we can get them to really connect with the music itself and with each other. And
That's
I
interesting. That's interesting. And I totally agree with you. I totally agree with you. But then I'm kind of learning too that for in some scenarios, like let me take it this way. If you go to a school in a like say in a poorer area or kids who haven't been exposed to any kind of formal music at all, sometimes I find that if you go the reverse of what you just said, it makes the performance part better. Does that make sense?
yes, it does, but I think I've got a response to that too. So keep in mind, part of what we think of as good is
Hmm.
based on our perspective.
Right. Yeah.
So if we go to that inner city school or a rural poor Kentucky school, for example, and they've never experienced what you and I would consider to be maybe high level choral music making,
Yeah. Yeah.
but we go in, maybe I'm the teacher and I walk in the room, I'm the new teacher at the school, and maybe compared to the kids that I work with now, these kids don't have very many musical skills, and we'll call that, point A, and
Mhm.
I get them to point A plus one, and I get them to see that they can actually improve. They're not nearly as good as the kids I work with now yet, but because of their perspective looking into it, they've now become better. And by them seeing that they actually could improve, like they got better at singing and they got better at making this music, and their eyes are now really big and wide, and they're like, "Wow, did you hear what we sounded like? That was so we've never sounded like that before." And at that point, I've got them.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, I agree. I agree. Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't mean it in some kind of an elitist way, like only the choirs at the Aeolians level are able to really understand. I don't mean it that way. I mean it in the if we use the music itself as a vehicle
Hmm.
to get their hearts open,
Yeah.
then
I,
then
I'm totally with you.
yeah.
I'm totally with you. It's kind of like my thoughts sometimes on like I've met a few guys in my lifetime who like are amazing. How should I say it? I don't want to put them in a genre. Let's take jazz for example. They can play jazz like back and forth and gospel, and they may be in their 20s or something, and they'll come to me and say, "Man, is can I learn to read music, or is it too late? And I've met a few of those guys who, because of their background and the way their brains think, they were surprised, and the teachers found a way. They started reading music and they caught on very, very, very quickly. But their approach was from the other way than we normally go, as opposed to someone who couldn't play by ear at all and started all formal, and then they struggle to go the other way. So I've seen guys come from the other direction, and so come into your conversation. That was the reverse thing I was talking about there. But I totally get your point too. I think both ways can work, but you have to be very, very skilled at doing it. The teacher, that is, to bring it out from both directions.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think another way, interesting way to think about this topic is through the context of your group and the Aeolians, of course. Kind of piggybacking a little bit. It's been over a year, but since the last time we talked on the show, we talked about this. Your ACDA performance and how excellent that was, and how everyone was just blown away. But at the same time, we talked about how there was this almost like this looming specter over that whole process of being the first black choir from a historically black college to come to ACDA, and there, none of us in the audience or you would have really enjoyed the experience if in our minds we were thinking they're really good for a black choir. So
Right.
like that would have been something that would have made everyone very uncomfortable. And so my point is, the Aeolians are what they are because they're just a damn good choir.
Mm.
You know what I mean? And so, and what I'm interested in with this concept is that I would guess that one of the reasons that people like listening to the Aeolians and like watching the videos that you guys put together is because you're singers, and this ties in probably to this teaching with heart idea, and this empathy idea, is your singers tend to sing and perform with a tremendous amount of visually confirmable
Hmm.
emotional connection to the music.
Wow, that's well said. I need to write that down.
Uh, and meaning even if you turned on turn the video on mute, you would see that the
Mm.
singers are really into it. And so my kooky theory, this is kind of tying it all the way back to my kooky theory. I have lots of those. But is that if the Aeolians sang largely out of tune, largely with imprecise diction,
Mm.
largely with maybe unagreed upon tempo, and just basically an average to subpar average musical element choir,
Mhm.
it would be harder for you to get them to feel that.
Correct. I totally agree with you. Yes.
Yeah, and because I feel it's something I've experienced my whole life. There's a certain amount of when we sing in a choir and it's not very good, it's distracting from the heart part of it that we want to feel. Like we want to just sing and have it this amazing experience where our sound waves are lining up with each other, and and there's a physical aspect of it. And I think what the Aeolians do is you've figured out some you've been saying secret sauce, but you've been figuring out some way to get that heart element and the excellent music element to line up. And what I wonder about in the in choir world is how does it, because I'm supportive, like I said, of us moving the conversation in the way of this diversity and social justice issues. But I want to also talk about the music stuff because I really do think we can't forget that,
Right.
and figuring out ways to get the choirs to be able to do both, and how do we define excellence in both ways, if
Right.
that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that was really well said, Chris. Like I said, so just yesterday I had my rehearsal with my students, and a couple of the pieces they could sing the piece from top to bottom now. And it sounds really, really good. But especially for my new people, they're realizing how picky I am. So in their minds, I could tell they're like, "Oh man, we know the song now," and I'm like, "No, we just begun." So, so the musical part for us, like you said, there is something to be said about clarity that's infused with the hard part. And if the clarity is on a low quotient, you could sing with all the heart you want, is going to be distracting, like you said. And
Mhm.
so I think I've always been very, very, very meticulous when it comes to the musical part and making sure all the phrases make sense. One thing I've been pushing myself for years now, decades probably, is trying to find the musical things that the audience won't expect. So my choir will tell you, I'm forever saying stuff like, I'll say, you know what, don't take the breath there because everyone expects you to breathe there. And I think part of a concert experience is doing things that people can anticipate. I don't know about you, Chris, but like I get bored sometimes if I'm sitting there and I could literally tell what's coming next. Like
Yep.
at some point I check out. I'm like, okay, they're about to do okay, right. And then I check out. But I try to reverse the process in my head as a conductor. I'm like, okay, they're gonna expect us to breathe here. So you know what? Carry that over. And I think stuff like that makes it like an exciting journey. So all of a sudden, I'm part of the experience because I'm okay. What's about to happen? What's about to happen? And I like to keep people on the edge like that. So yeah, so the musical clarity has to be there. And I think what I could say to encompass my whole point here is trying to find those things that you can add even after you could sing the piece from to bottom. I think two groups end and we lose. Okay, what do we do after that to really take this thing to the stratosphere? I think that's where I always push my ensembles to get to.
Yeah. And I bet you once you do, a lot of those conversations that you have about the piece itself, and like we were talking about earlier, the meaning behind it and the empathy piece and the singing with heart, I bet you it comes easier once they aren't struggling mentally with the musical process. That I think that's a really important. Did I lose you there for a second, Jason?
Quick second, but it's back now.
Okay, good. Yeah, so I mean, I think that it's almost like the musical skill that we're helping them learn lubricates the mind so that we're not having to think as hard about how we're singing. And that once we're not thinking so hard about how we're singing, then we can finally open our heart
Yeah,
up to the musical experience. And I think for the music educator, especially down at the high school and middle school level where I live, um, it's I haven't seen the adult singers I work with since before COVID, so I'm not
right,
really thinking about that right now.
right.
But with the kids that because they're learning a new skill with this music idea, uh, I feel like I've got to focus with them on that because if I can't get them past that, then I know they'll never get to the heart stage.
I'm with you. I'm totally with you. Totally with you. And
Yeah.
then let me give you another example of where I would probably approach it in the reverse. For example, with say my kids on the college level, if I had to do a piece like Frida of Erden by Schoenberg, for my kids, I would probably have to teach a little bit of heart first. Because if I start that crazy piece with notes, they'll be looking at me like, well, what the heck is this?
Yep.
So a situation like that, I may have to bring in a little heart on the front side and get to open them up a little bit first because I could try all I want on the musical things. The notes are not going in.
Yeah. Oh no. I agree. I agree with that little bit of nuance there. I
Yeah,
think that there is definitely depends on the piece.
right,
There's and the singers in front of you. There's got to be they've got to have some reason to want to sing it.
right, right,
Which if it's I mean, and anytime you put Schoenberg in front of anybody,
right.
you're going to have to maybe bribe them
Yeah.
or something. But yeah, no, I think that's really important. So I wonder too because I think a lot about, as you know, I'm a big fan of the group. I told you this last time you were on. One of my favorite things to do is to show Aeolians videos to my classes. And this year, we are in a weird hybrid start to our school year. So I see half of my choir, each of the choirs, I see half of them 2 days a week. So we never are in, with the exception of my chamber choir, my I guess we would say our elite group. They get to come together all at the same time once a week.
Okay.
But everybody else, I only see half the group. So we're doing a lot of this type of group building and class discussion stuff. Very, very. We need to get your book is what we need to do because we're doing a lot of these discussions online where we can put this content out there. And one of our assignments just last week actually was to watch an Aeolians performance video. And this
Wow.
is actually what we asked the kids to comment on was the emotional engagement from the singers, and in what ways can you tell they're emotionally engaged. And so you see these super scared 14-year-olds that have never sung before, and they're watching your kids sing, and they're talking about how it just doesn't even seem like they're thinking about the music. It just sounds like they're, or it looks like they're just singing and they already knew the song. Like,
Right.
and I'm like, well, yes, of course, but they practiced really hard, like they didn't just start singing. But for these kids, they've never done choir before, so they don't really understand. And so I think that's a really powerful demonstration, and whether it's the Aeolians or really any other good choir that does that. So
Right.
that's a really cool thing. So
Yeah.
what about so for you now, when you kind of move through the rest of this school year,
Mhm.
you talked about doing a performance, you're going to do some holiday stuff. What is, if you had to think about your whole school year, knowing that everything is so weird
Yeah.
right now, and you had to start naming some goals for the Aeolians or any other students you work with in any other context, how are you telling them? What are you telling them about their goal for this academic year?
Chris, it's kind of like what you said at the beginning. I don't know of any choir director that has a steady plan at this point. So some of them asked me that question at the first rehearsal, and I remember one young lady. This is all new for everyone. So she said out loud, she said, "So, do we have any tours planned?" And everybody's kind of started chuckling, like, no, hello." So we this Christmas project is a thing right in front of us, and honestly, Chris, I have no idea what's going to happen after that. I mean, I've been kind of toying with doing some other kind of video recording, maybe in the spring. I don't know if it'll be like a all Negro spiritual thing, or I don't know. I have no idea. Who knows what the spring semester will look like because of the all these bad forecasts about what the virus is going to do between now and January. So I'm choosing to save my brain power and just kind of wait and see what's going to happen, and we could make some last minute decisions. But I have no long term goals for this school year, Chris. That's just the honest truth. So my main thing, like I said, is just to try and keep the community of my students together in the choir
Mhm.
and focus on other things like some of these discussion things that you probably wouldn't have as much time to do in the normal circumstance. And once we get the Christmas project out, my intention is to bring in some guests to talk to my students and show them different aspects of not just music, musical guests, but I want to use this time to really, make them better citizens. I mean, we try to do that all the time, right? But I want to
Right.
bring in someone who could teach them about, I don't know, how do you do your taxes, or how do you maintain your credits? Like life skill things that
Hmm.
that we hope they get outside of our choir room, but a lot of times they don't. So I just think it's my responsibility now to try and find just different ways to get through the school year, but still give my students these tools they can use for life, whether musical tools or non-musical tools. I just think that's probably more important now than anything else.
Right. So let's finish with this then. I think this is kind of a fun but on the spot way to finish a podcast. Um, if we talked earlier about the this idea that when we go online as choir directors, we're seeing a lot, especially since May,
Yeah.
a lot of social justice conversations, and that kind of dominates our online conversation. And of course, that doesn't mean that that's what dominates our classroom experience. We're teaching quarter notes, and we're teaching, oh, we have to fit all this in. But are there things that you feel like the choir profession should be talking about, but isn't?
Hmm. Great question. Um, you- as soon as you said, some things flash in my mind. For example, I think I saw Jonathan Talberg make a post a few days ago, and he was saying something like, I'm paraphrasing. He was like, I have all these music degrees, I have my doctorate in music, but I never took one music technology class.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So here comes March, and all of a sudden we are thrown into the deep end when it comes to technology. So I feel in the choral world, in the music world, we probably need to emphasize more to our students the use of technology and kind of getting familiar or realizing that's going to be a huge part going forward. That comes to my mind quickly. Another thing that comes to my mind very, very, very quickly is you know how can we use how can we use music as a tool to bring about what's the word I'm looking for? To make racial integration a little smoother. Like sometimes I feel like we compartmentalize so many things and we miss the point that wow, we have the gift of music. Let's use that as a tool because everyone loves music, right? By and large. And I think we could use it a little more intentional, not slap it in people's faces, but use it as a tool to do that. When you make that comment, what else flashes in my mind, Jason?
Well, actually, can we go back and talk about that last one for a second?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's fascinating to me because I think that actually highlights one of my the things that I would have said too, which is that what is the goal of social justice conversations, or what should be the goal, which is to help that racial, like you said, unity or cohesion happen more smoothly.
Right.
Is the goal to, and you said smack it in people's faces, is the goal to punish, or is the goal to bring together? And then how does music accomplish that? I think that would be an amazing way to frame this conversation.
Right. So I mean, I think classical music, I think, just offers us an intricate portrait in how we could bring racial harmony was the word I was looking for. How can we foster racial harmony by using music? So for example, I've been thinking a lot about these pieces and composers that we don't hear much about. Like
Mhm.
my one of my favorite pieces is the Chariot Jubilee by R. Nathaniel Dett. And when you study Dett, you realize that Dett was influenced by so many uh, teachers that were not of his race. And Dett had, when he went through his entire schooling as a student, Dett, for some reason, because of his personality, because of his musicianship, he was always able to bring about diverse audiences in one place, whether it was to his piano recitals or to his choir concerts. And I look at the life of Dett, and I'm like, man, he was a guy who's doing exactly what this entire nation, this entire world needs to be doing. And he was using music as the medium. So I wrote this piece and it'll be in an upcoming Choral Journal article. You should see it soon before the year's out. Basically, how I'm using the Chariot Jubilee, the music, as an instrument for fostering racial harmony. So the point is not to shame anyone or to make anyone feel bad. I'm just saying, hey, if even if I could just get people to think about it initially,
Mhm.
that'll be success in itself. Because a lot of us just don't think about it. And when I say a lot of us, Chris, I'm talking about both black and white. So let me be real clear on that. Because as a black person, there are just certain things we need to approach the other side of the fence from our side too. So it's not just a social justice thing. Oh well, anybody who's not black needs to give it black. That's not what I'm saying at all. There's so many biases on both sides that need to be analyzed and looked and talked about so that we could foster this racial harmony. So it's from both sides, and it's not about shaming any one side, but just trying to bring the discussions to bring about unity.
Yeah, I think about that a lot, and I think about my entire interest in almost all of these topics related to how it would affect my students.
Right.
So my that's where I get my drive and my passion to do this show is I see a lot of issues reflected in my own students, and of course I think about my kids first as individual humans,
Right.
and second as members of a race or a culture, or
Exactly. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
and they're individual students. And so I think about how cool it is in a music class or a choir or any kind of musical setting where, even if it's just for a second, I know we're not supposed to like be colorblind now, like that's a whole thing, you're not supposed to do that, but for just a hot minute, when you're singing with somebody or playing with somebody, to be able to just only be musically connected with that other human being and not know or care
Exactly.
what color their skin is, which again doesn't mean that you can't know or care in other contexts.
Hmm.
You can know and care in other contexts, but in that musical context, that to me is like that. That's what the world needs more than anything else is to be seen. Have everybody seen shedding what really, honestly, just between you and me and several thousand people, is just uh, race is a biological fiction. It's a social construct. I mean, there's no such thing as a pure race. Anyone
Right.
like anywhere on the planet.
Right.
So in fact, I've got Native American ancestry within the living memory of some of my
Well,
living relatives, but I don't identify as a native. So what does that even mean? Like, what does that mean? So, there's that whole aspect to it. And I think the power of music to me is that we get to just make sound waves together and vibe, which is super hippie of me to say. But I think that did I take it too far? Or is that kind of what you're saying with like using music to foster this unity?
I think that's exactly what I'm saying. I mean, part of it is, yeah, making music, not realizing, oh well, I'm making music, but I'm black and white. No, we don't need to go. That's not the angle, but I think the music is just giving us that what's that? I'm looking for this really nice word, Chris. Insatiable curiosity
Hmm.
about my fellow man. And the fact that I could sit here and make these beautiful sound waves with you will hopefully then spark a desire to learn more about you as a human being.
Yes.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Yes, I like that even better than how that whole rant that I yes,
Right.
that I said. I like that the way you said it.
Yeah.
The yeah, because it does. It almost it opens up a door between two people that maybe the door is closed because society and culture has told us it should be closed,
Right.
and then we're a little bit nervous to open it, but by the act of making music together, it just bursts the door open, and now I can ask you questions. Now we can talk. Uh,
Exactly.
you know, that I think that really can and does happen. I've seen that with my own students. Like I've seen it happen. I know it can happen. I think that's really important.
Yeah. Exactly. So that we just hit the nail on the head right there. And I think that's the beauty of what we do. And I think we have an advantage because we have the music that's a tool that's, like I said, so many people enjoy music and we could use it to foster that curiosity amongst all types of people, not
Mhm.
just the people in my circle, people in your circle, but across circles, across the world, that sort of thing. And that's my whole thing these days. Just try and foster curiosity amongst people.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much. We'll end it right there because that when we you can't go beyond nailing it on the head. That's just
Right.
That's just perfect. All right. Well, thank you so much. And get home and see those kids and your lovely wife and
Yeah,
have a restful evening.
man. You too, Chris. This was wonderful. Tell Beth I said hello.
Will do. Will do.
Dude, take
All
care,
right.
Chris. All right, bye.
Talk to you later. Bye. Thank you, as always, for sticking around to the end of the episode. I just feel refreshed whenever I get a chance to have a conversation with Jason. There's just so much passion there for not just the art form itself, but the why behind the art form. And I'm just going to have to keep asking Jason to come back on the show and share wisdom in the future because he really is a thinker when it comes to our art form. And that's really important. I think all of us need to take that example and think more about what it is that we do and why it is that we do it. These are the conversations that we're trying to have on this show, and I hope you're enjoying it. If you are still listening to the words I'm saying right now, that probably means you are to some degree getting something out of this, in which case the things that you can do to help are really, really important. First, if you're not a part of the Choralosophers Facebook group, go over there and join. You can also subscribe on the website, choralosophy.com. You can subscribe on patreon.com/choralosophy. That's an opt-in for as little as $3 a month for some extra content. So an extra episode to your feed each month, as well as some other materials and discussions behind the scenes over there. those are all ways you can help. But if you are just a passive helper and you are able to click like when you see a Facebook post, when you're able to share a Facebook post, when you're able to retweet something on the Choralosophy Twitter, or even just interacting with the Choralosophy Instagram, any of the things that you can do to help drive the algorithms of our social media evil overlords to let other people see the content more, all these things, even if you can't make a donation on Patreon, or even if you don't have the budget to make a purchase for one of these sponsors, but you want to support the show, that's actually a really helpful thing for you to do, because for every interaction that you do to one of my posts, that's less ad dollars that I have to pay to the overlords to allow people to see it. Because of course that's how the game works, is Facebook and Instagram and Twitter want my money, so to allow you to see the content. And the workaround is to have you help me share and help me spread the word. So when I say this show is totally listener supported, that's what I mean. This show would not exist if the listeners of the show didn't decide to use those ad codes, or those coupon codes, to share the episodes, to give ratings on the podcast apps, the interact, send an email, like anything that you can do to make this truly a conversation for our choral nerd friends, then that's really what we want. So again, on the way out, don't forget to look into the Atlanta opportunity. I think that's going to be a really fun thing. I know there's a lot up in the air, which is why we tried to keep it as inexpensive and cancelable if COVID stuff happens that we don't like between now and April. The nice thing, I got my tickets for the flight on Southwest, because Southwest is now doing it's super easy to cancel flights on Southwest. If we aren't able to do it or whatever, then it's free. You just cancel the flight for free. So those are all kinds of advantages we have working for us to go ahead and just make a plan in April and hope it works out. And we'll be continuing to plan and add and find presenters that are willing to come and lead conversations with us down there. Okay, thanks so much. Tune in next time. I appreciate you guys.